The Quest for Glory 1 speedrun is one of the hardest in adventure games. In this run, half the key presses are buffered and the other half are timed to perfection. The run is just incredibly optimized. There is no time to spare if you want to take advantage of Elsa's frame rule. So imagine getting a run on world record pace, getting really lucky with the RNG, scrambling madly through Fred's cave at 9 inputs a second, performing some of the hardest keyboard inputs you have ever done in your entire life, and then the buffer strat you relied upon fails, and there is nothing you can do about it. You're only left with one question. Why? In March of 2025, SantaClaus got bored waiting for the holidays and started looking into the Quest for Glory speedrun. What he found was a tied world record. Myself and Reynolds had exactly the same time, to the frame. Both runs featured new tech and new optimizations that had been made in the years following the world record history video that OneShortEye made back in 2021. We now pathed through the archery range instead of taking the southern forests, we glitched through Toro's door instead of opening it, and we skipped over Yorick's maze instead of suffering in perpetual anguish. Yeah, high-speed hero mode breaks a lot of world geometry, and we made use of all of it. Still, despite these innovations, our two runs were still quite old. Mine was coming up on 2 years of age, and that was the last Quest for Glory record that frequently used the mouse for precision movement. Reynolds' run was a little bit more recent with some up-to-date tech. Notably, he had discovered an optimization in the cafeteria which saved a few keystrokes, but his run was also getting a little old, having been completed in the summer of last year. New optimizations have been discovered in the interim, and Santa? Well, as he always does, he found even more. Santa wanted to be the first runner who would actually manipulate a certain frame rule. When you reach Elsa, the brigand leader, a cutscene plays out. The length of this cutscene is variable. The way Sierra's cutscenes worked is that they would program in multiple full-second delays in order to give the cutscenes the timings they wanted. In this case, there is an initial delay of 4 seconds, a dramatic pause essentially, then a musical sting. 3 seconds later, Elsa leaps over her desk and you can act again. But the delays don't start counting down when you enter the room or when you enter the cutscene. This delay is on a full second frame rule. They can only trigger every second on the second. If you enter Elsa's room at 43.9, the cutscene begins at the start of the next full second, which is 44.0. It's a delay of only 0.1 seconds. But if you enter her room at 44.01, the cutscene still starts at the beginning of the next full second, at 45. If you don't reach her room on a good time, you can actually lose the better part of a full second. To make matters worse, because of course they get worse, this start of a full second frame rule, it doesn't initialize when you press start game. It initialized before you even launched it. It's based on your computer's system clock when you open DOSBox. This nonsense is really not possible to keep track of normally. Luckily, there is a bug in the game. This one. Do you see what they did there? Yes, Bird. This little guy, which moves across the main menu, is one of the earliest memories I have from this game. I call him Steve. He's also frame ruled. Steve, the frame skip bug, is programmed to crawl up the screen a certain distance and then come to a stop right here. I may need to move my bird, one moment. Then, a scripted delay occurs, using the same full second delay that's used in the Elsa cutscene. This means that the exact frame when the scorpion starts moving again is the exact beginning of a new full second. We can now time our theoretical Elsa room entry to be just a moment before any full second rollover to make sure that the cutscene delay is as short as possible. Thus, with the power of Scorpion math, SantaClaus offset his speedrun timer so that the run he wanted would not get caught up in a longer delay right at the very end. Solving the frame rule would ensure a good ending, but Santa wanted a good run, so before he started he went looking for a few minor optimizations. In Quest for Glory 1 and 2, we do a piece of tech called parser dumping. The parser only adds inputs every 0.1 seconds, so typing in any command takes a lot longer than you would think. However, by typing inputs during screen transitions, the inputs are still processed during the loading times, and the output on the next screen happens much faster. Santa found more opportunities for parser dumping, but they're a lot harder than most. Going for them would mean a lot of resets, but combined they save almost a full second. It was too tempting not to try. But the best thing he found by far was an optimization I myself had been struggling to find. He found a consistent method to skip through Toro's Gate. My bird is impressed. Did you know that picking up rocks breaks the world? Well, rocks actually break a lot of the games in this series, but nowhere is that as pronounced as in Quest for Glory 1. The rock getting animation is actually bugged. Whenever it triggers, it removes collision for certain sprites in the game. Sprites like these bushes, for example. And sprites like Toro's door. If you pick up rocks on this screen, you can use High Speed Hero to phase through the door with some precise input. There's no need to first cast open and then type open when you're standing next to the door. You can just phase right through it. But it's weirdly precise. You can't just run up to it and go through, there's like an input for it. You have to toggle High Speed Hero while you're right next to the door and then kind of wiggle through it. You basically stop for a brief moment before you go through. It is a bit clunky, but you still save time with this method over opening the door normally. But Santa wasn't quite happy with that, so he found this. By doing a very precise high-speed hero toggle during the screen transition, you end up on exactly the right Y level for the skip to work. A quick high-speed hero toggle during the diagonal movement is now all you need. This saves a few tenths of a second and is very consistent. With all of these optimizations, and with Elsa's frame rule in the palm of his hand, Santa was ready to do a run. On the 20th of March 2025, after a mere 237 attempts, Santa would earn a 54.8 second run, 2 seconds faster than the existing world records. That was his first ever time submitted to the Quest for Glory 1 leaderboards. That is a heck of a statement for a runner to make. This run was the culmination of far too much esoteric tech, and countless pieces of minor optimizations, some old and some new. Out of interest, let's just look at a few of them. Prepared inputs are back. If you saw my Quest for Glory 2 video, you'll know that we can prepare inputs prior to the run by opening the pauser during the startup sequence. That trick works in this game as well. Here, run lets us start the game in a running state so that we don't have to type it in-game at all, and buy open lets us quickly buy the open spell from Zara without typing in the full thing. Combined, these prepared inputs save a little over a second. The game remembers your last used noun. If you buy open at Zara's shop, you don't need to cast open at the rock, you can just cast it. This saves 2 keystrokes. Oh yeah, it's all coming together. Some spots in the game require absolute precision, which is really hard to do with just keyboard input. The most notable spot is the rock in front of the secret passage. You need to cast the open spell to unlock it, push the rock, say a passphrase, and then go inside, all with as few inputs as possible. This shouldn't be a problem, except if you're even slightly too far away from the rock, the inputs won't work. And note, this counts as too far. Too far! My foot is pushing against the goddamn whatever. Runners used to use the mouse to maneuver into position, but this is actually hard and inconsistent. When I was going for the 56-second record, I found a very simple piece of tech. When the screen is loading, press diagonally up left. After it loads, you will land in this top corner. Once here, press diagonally down left, and you will end up exactly at the rock. From this pixel, you can perform the entire sequence very easily. This changed the Antwerp screen. What was once a major reset point was now completely consistent. These were some of the strats Santa used in his world record run, and he nailed all of them. It was a good run, certainly a good first run on the leaderboards. Any adventure game speedrunners listening to this aren't really that surprised though. Santa has a habit of suddenly showing up and smashing world records. But he's also well known for one more thing. SantaClaus is never satisfied with any run. As he always does, Santa kept going. "53 seconds. Santa was actually pretty happy with this one. This run was just the result of tighter execution, enough to save a full second, but he was brushing up against the limits of what he could do. As he commented, a 52-second run might be possible? Barely. It would require a big grind though, and Santa was starting to get burned out by something else, something which, eventually, any speedrunner will fall victim to. I spoke recently about the inputs in Quest for Glory games. In the first 2 games in the series, keyboard input is only translated into action every 10th of a second. So if you press a button, you have to wait until the next 10th of a second for it to be processed. This is both a blessing and a curse. On the one hand, many inputs will be very slightly inconsistent. On the other, there is a maximum allowable speed limit, which makes the speedrun more accessible. Let's say you only need to have a typing speed of about 100 words per minute instead of like mine. But I'm making a video essay about input delays in a 36-year-old Sierra adventure game, so it's safe to say that I'm a nerd. But the biggest boon that we speedrunners get from this delay is the fact that inputs can also be buffered. This is how you can type in a whole bunch of letters into a parser and have them eventually show up. There are several things about this run that wouldn't be possible without this buffer. The human viable archery range is one example. If you couldn't buffer during screen transitions, it just wouldn't be doable. And that brings us to Yorick's maze. This is Yorick, this is his maze, this place is bullshit. Navigating Yorick's maze casually is kind of charming. It's a bit frustrating. You have to navigate through these very narrow walk... Let's pretend that didn't happen. You have to navigate along a very thin walkway in order to reach the end of the maze. It's confusing and MC Eschery deliberately so. Runners used to have to deal with parts of Yorick's maze where Yorick will chuck random garbage, throw spells at you as you try to navigate his maze. Even on speedrunning speeds, can you imagine trying to navigate this whole maze? It's actually really difficult to move around on these tight walkways, and then Yorick will randomly chuck shit at you. This used to be the run. Can you imagine runners doing this for so long? This place is insanity. So let's just skip it. Let us, collectively, never do Yorick's maze normally again. Except, what happened here? We should talk about what this skip entails. The geometry of Quest for Glory 1 is a little, bent, crooked, broken. Slightly. Yorick's maze is also slightly bent, crooked, broken. A little. It's not too bad, though. Okay, it's a little bad, but it's advantageous to us. There is a thing unique to game version 1.0. It's called High Speed Hero. On the face of it, this function does what it says it does. It speeds you up. But it looks a bit weird. This is because it doesn't actually increase your movement speed. Instead, it makes you skip between positions with every movement tick. You're actually skipping over several pixels this way, which lets you just barely skip over the falling triggers in Yorick's maze. This breaks it pretty hard. It doesn't break everything everywhere, but it breaks enough to let us get across to where we need to go. We need to land on a very precise pixel on the top platform. From here, a single mouse click will get us to the door. But getting to the precise pixel from the entrance is trickier. There is no normal sequence of inputs which will get us there. Any initial cardinal direction leads to death or getting stuck. There's no sequence of moves which gets us there either. You can't, for example, press down right and then wait until you touch the wall and then press up. The only way to get to the other side is by buffering inputs. If you press 9 and then less than 0.1 seconds later you press 7, you will buffer the movement diagonal up right into diagonal up left, and you will land on the edge of the platform. Except you won't, because the game hates you, which you already knew from watching the introduction to this video. For frick's sake, the keyboard is pulled every 10th of a second, or about every 6 frames, so it should be consistent, but if you're perceptive, you just noticed me using the word about. Because it's mostly every 6 frames, except when it's 5. Whenever you need buffer strats for absolute accuracy, if you end up with a 5-frame buffer instead of a 6-frame buffer, the buffer will fail and you have to reset. Very slightly inconsistent is enough to doom the run here too. So, how to deal with this? For Yorick's maze, the answer, which works most of the time, is to press 3 first. By repositioning yourself to the bottom right before you do the skip, the wrong frame buffer seems to be less common. Why? Because the variance doesn't actually seem to be entirely random. If you load a game and do the same buffer strat over and over and practice, the length seems to be consistent, even if you vary up the start time. This makes absolutely no sense with what we know of the input buffer, but don't tell the game that, it might stop working. It annoyed Santa anyway, which is a terrifying sentence come to think of it, so he might have been content with a 53-second run, happy to leave for pastures new. If not for a brand new discovery which pertained to all games made with Sierra's game engine, and would really do something weird in this one. My most recent video essay was about a bug I discovered with Sierra's SCI engine. I called the bug the Sierra script desync glitch, it rolls right off the tongue, but the glitch relates to script timings specifically. Any cutscenes which have built-in delays can be desynced from the main background timer. By pausing and unpausing the game, you can trigger these delays to happen asynchronously, nearly simultaneously, instead of sequentially. This can result in some unusual effects. SantaClaus realized this desync might be applicable to Elsa's room in Quest for Glory. By repeatedly pausing the game, we can desync the cutscene, and thus trigger the musical cue while we are still running into the room. This lets us cast open before we reach the desk, and because we broke out of the script before it could finish... No clip! This keeps happening in Quest for Glory games these days, I'm excited. In this case, it's a fairly minor effect overall, because you were always able to leave the screen anyway, but now we can leave the screen without setting our movement state from run to walk mode, and without disabling high-speed hero. Instead of a long walk to the exit, you sprint there in a fraction of the time. But only if you could find the exact right timings for the pauses could this glitch have a chance of saving any time, and that would be difficult. It took over a day of work before Santa concluded that yes, this was the secret sauce which could push the record even lower. Difficult or not, Santa was going for it. On the 26th of March, only 2 days after his previous world record, Santa posted a new time, a 52-second speedrun with the desync glitch. He was now 4 seconds ahead of second place. Santa had braved the monster spawns, the stag RNG, pixel-precise mouse clicks, and the deadly input buffer, all for a chance to perform the incredibly difficult desync glitch at the very end of a world record run, and damn was it ever fun to watch. Santa moved on to Quest for Glory 2 after this, and he is currently in the process of beating my 1 minute 10 second world record. Knowing him, he'll get it in a few days or so. As for his Quest for Glory 1 run, he had this to say.
Is 51 possible? Theoretically, yes. But there is very little time left on the table except maybe in Yorick's room, where instant transitions between mouse and keyboard could shave off enough time to make 51 reasonable. Instant swapping, though, is not only extremely hard, but entirely impossible the way I've been playing, with the keyboard in my lap and the mouse on the table. The only pathways to save enough time there would be 1. Be a three-handed mutant freak like Kane, or 2...
No, you can stop there. I need a good stag. Okay, a good everything, but... I will settle for no monsters and a good stag at this point. At least everything else is going well. Nice. Thank you, Stag. Holy cow. Okay, that's perfect. Right, let's not screw up Yorick again. That's good. Oh my word, these are rare. That's the improvement I was looking for. In so many ways, that's gonna be hard to beat. Well, GG. Santa thought a 51-second run was theoretically possible. He was, to his credit, correct. So, what did I do differently? Honestly, not much. Buffer strats for Zara's shop and the secret entrance save a few frames, as does a brief high-speed hero toggle on Toro's screen. But these pale compared to the fastest cave run ever performed. If you've done this run before, watching this is kind of mesmerizing. Anyway, frame perfect, we think. Oh, and I had the fastest Yorick's maze and also a good desync glitch, but now I'm just bragging. It's the best run I've ever done. I didn't even do it for this video, it just happened. And here we are. It's tempting to leave it there, but I do want to look at one more question. Can the time go any lower now? If you mean tenths of a second, yes, there are frames to be gained in town and at Toro's. I could have gotten the very rare super stag pattern, and Elsa's frame rule could be tightened up. But if you don't include tricks that human players cannot perform, a perfect run would brush right up against the 50-second barrier, and then stop. Our calculations show that it is not possible for human players to go lower than 50 seconds with our current understanding of the game. There just aren't any more frames to find. One day, someone will get 49 seconds, I've no doubt. But for the moment, we don't yet understand how. Thank you for watching, and have a great night.